Hello, I'm Simon Adavisi and welcome to highlights of the 2012 Formula SimRacing World Championship. After a long off-season, rFactor's top F1 league is back in action, and after much deliberation, the decision was made to stick with rFactor 1 for the race start, with the intent to switch over to rF2 once the simulator is at a more complete stage. And so the season kicks off with the Australian Grand Prix. One of the few street circuits on the calendar, the Melbourne Grand Prix circuit runs clockwise around the Albert Park Lake and is composed almost entirely of tight turns and chicanes running across a very flat track. The combination of slow corners and several straights will put the driver's brakes to the test, and with very little runoff area, there is almost no room for error. Qualifying rules remain the same this season, with a 10-minute session for all drivers, and the top 10 then advancing through to a second session where they are only allowed to drive one single flying lap, bound by Parc Fermé rules. And it was ATR driver Morgan Morand who set the season opening pole position, edging out Stoffel Vandoorne by just over 0.02 of a second. Defending champion Bodo Huis set the third fastest time, just ahead of Twister Racing's Frederick Nilsson. David Greco, now driving for the new McCall Racing team, qualified in 5th ahead of Yannick Lapchan in 6th. GT Amiga Racing's Rasmus Tali set the 7th fastest time ahead of fellow Estonian Reino Room in 8th, driving for GT Amiga's new sister team RS Evo. Dejan Kostadinov qualified in 9th, with GoSpeed's Jim Parisas just making it inside the top 10. Van der Linden would start in 11th ahead of both of the Silverline cars of Musculi and Disley. Malorqui put his Twister machine into 14th on the grid, and Saxon set the 15th fastest time in his first race for Faster Than Speed. With a full grid of 26 starters and refueling being reintroduced into the 2012 season, the opening round was set to be an entertaining Grand Prix. To the race start, and all the front runners made an equal getaway off the line, with Morand holding the lead and Vandoorne narrowly keeping ahead of Huis. Into the turn 1 crunch, Kostadinov came together with Lapchan, resulting in Kostadinov sliding off the track and slamming into the barriers. The rest of the field made it through without incident down into turn 3 with few position changes. Vandoorne was immediately on the back foot, keeping Huis behind him, and Van der Linden passed teammate Room for 7th place. Unfortunately, things got ugly when Musculi put the power down too quickly out of turn 4, and he collected John-Eric Saxon, damaging both cars substantially in the crash. Fabrizio Gobi also lost his front wing as a result of the pile-up, and along with Saxon was forced to limp slowly back to pit lane. By the end of the first lap, Morgan Morand already had a substantial gap over second place Stoffel Vandoorne. Bono Huis was immediately behind, followed by Frederick Nilsson, David Greco and Rasmus Tali, with the two RS Evo cars not far behind. Into turn 3, Twister Racing driver Edward Malorqui passed Yannick Lapchan for 9th, and later on in the lap the Spaniard managed to get alongside Reino Room. However, the pair made contact through the Ascari, resulting in Lapchan rear-ending Room, forcing both cars into the barrier. Malorqui escaped unharmed, but both Room and Lapchan were forced to the pit. Just ahead, another incident ended Jim Parisas' race as the GoSpeed driver defended against Gergo Baldi, and the two made contact with Parisas sliding off the track and crunching into the barriers. Patrick de Wit then made it past both of the Netrex cars at once to move up into 9th place, and just behind Mikko Puubalainen was battling against his old teammate Jarkko Mäkkönen in the Faster Than Speed car over 12th position. Blair Disley was running in 14th ahead of Manasakis until the Greek debutant had a slip through turn 9, dropping back behind Martin Gosby. Unfortunately, Manasakis' race ended a few laps later when the GoSpeed driver lost traction out of turn 4 and crushed his front left suspension into the Armco. Bringing up the rear of the field, the two R-Seat France cars, driven by brothers Jimmy and Jonathan Dion, were now up into 16th and 17th place. At the front, Morgan Morand was storming away, continuing to increase his lead over the others, with Bono Huis unable to find a way around Stoffel Vandoorne. Despite several attacks from the Precision Motorsports veteran, Vandoorne stood his ground, showing he was in no way intimidated by the two-time world champion. In 4th place, a small mistake from David Greco allowed Rasmus Tali to jump up into 5th, and just behind Malorqui continued his charge, making an aggressive pass to get around Marcel van der Linden for 7th place. On lap 10, Huis eventually made it through on the inside of the Ascari, albeit with some tyre rubbing between the two cars. Frederik Nielsen followed suit a few corners later, passing Van Dorn through turn 1. However, Van Dorn then broke very late for turn 3, sideswiping Nielsen in the process and retaking his position. Tali now tried to take advantage of the situation, but Greco drove up the inside and Tali ran out of road, losing out to both Greco and Malorqui. Frederik Nielsen was the next driver to make a mistake, sliding out of control through the high-speed chicane. The Swede damaged his car on the barrier, but was able to continue driving with minimal damage. Clearly employing a 3-stop strategy, Huis was the first of the front runners to pit, diving in on lap 14. He emerged just in front of 12th placed Jarkko Mäkinen, who lost traction as he exited turn 1, causing Puumalainen to collide with his rear wheel. Mäkinen kept his vehicle out of the barriers, but both he and Puumalainen would have to contend with a damaged car for the remainder of the race. Meanwhile, a terrible miscalculation led Van der Linden to run out of fuel on lap 16, a disappointing end to what was a very promising Grand Prix. As the others pitted, it became apparent that David Greco was the only front-runner on a 2-stop strategy, along with Mikko Puumalainen and Blair Disley. After everyone had made their first stop, Iran now had a solid 7-second lead over Huis. Van Dorn was in 3rd ahead of Malorqui in 4th, Greco was running in 5th, just ahead of Rasmus Tali in 6th, and after recovering from his brief off-track excursion, Frederik Nielsen passed Patrick de Wit for 7th place. The two Netrex cars of Peter Varga and Gergo Baldi were now just inside the top 10 in their first Grand Prix. But it wasn't until the second set of stops that the race began to take shape. Greco's 2-stop strategy had placed the Italian into 3rd place, but with a lighter running Van Dorn not far behind in 4th, it was becoming apparent that his strategy hadn't quite worked. Puumalainen was now way up into 6th place, with Mäkinen just behind, who would get to make his second stop. Mäkinen's presence was holding up Rasmus Tali and Frederik Nielsen, who were unable to find their way through. Eventually Mäkinen pitted, and on the very next lap Nielsen made his move on Tali, making a classy outside pass around turn 3 for 7th place. Further behind, Ash Racing driver Martin Gosby was battling with Peter Varga over 12th place, but the Briton couldn't quite make a move stick. Several laps later, Gergo Baldi exited the pits just out in front, and Gosby attempted to drive around the outside, only to make contact with the Hungarian and end up sliding onto the grass. Having struggled with the Netrex cars, Gosby then fell victim to a very bold overtaking move from Jarkko Mäkinen, with the faster-than-speed driver making a pass around the outside into the high-speed chicane. Lap 38, and Greco completed his second and final stop, emerging in 5th place, just in front of Frederik Nielsen. It only took Nielsen 2 laps to clear the Italian, but with another stop still to make, the Twister Racing driver would need to extend a large gap over Greco very quickly to hold on to his 5th place. The other 2 stoppers of Mikko Puumalainen and Blair Disley also pitted soon after, with Puumalainen going in first. He emerged way down the order in 13th place, but with no more stops to make, the Finn was in a good position to take home a top 10 finish. Battling directly with Disley, the two had a nail-biting moment into turn 1 as Disley came out of pit lane, with Puumalainen just clearing the Silverline car by the skin of his teeth. As the race went on, the punishing Melbourne Grand Prix circuit claimed several victims. Yannick Lapchan span off at turn 1 after touching the grass under braking. Fabrizio Gobi dropped his car through turn 3 after a very difficult day, and Jonathan Dion's brakes eventually overheated and failed, leaving him stranded in the gravel trap. With less than 15 laps to go, the 3 stoppers came in for their final stops. Morgan Moran was on course to comfortably take the win, with Bono Huis unable to make any impression on the 8-second gap to the lead. Stoffel Van Dorn was in a lonely 3rd place, and David Greco now looked set for 4th, having done enough to keep ahead of both the Twister Racing cars of Malorqui and Nielsen. Puumalainen was now up into 8th, but in his 3rd stint the Finn didn't seem to be as strong as the Silverline car immediately behind him, and with just 2 laps to go, the Precision Motorsports driver made the mistake on the exit of the final turn, being very lucky not to end up in the barriers, and handing the position over to Disley, much to the delight of the home crowd. Despite a healthy 8-second gap going into the final lap, Moran pushed hard to make sure he picked up the fastest lap, the pole, and the race win. Achieving only his 2nd career victory, the Frenchman affirmed his position as one of the main contenders for the 2012 championship, dominating the Australian Grand Prix with a comfortable win. Bonohuis had no difficulty picking up second place, making the podium finish look easy, and AT Racing Stoffel Van Dorn finished only his second FSR Grand Prix in third position. David Greco picked up fourth place, acknowledging that his strategy didn't quite work as he expected. 2011 World Trophy champion Edward Malorqui put in an amazing drive to finish in a solid fifth ahead of his teammate Frederick Nilsson. Rasmus Tarley put in a good drive on his debut with GT Amiga Racing to finish in 7th. Blair Disley finished his home Grand Prix in 8th, just ahead of Mikko Puumalainen, and Patrick de Wit picked up the final point despite qualifying way down in 22nd place. As this is the first round of the season, the driver points table is a direct reflection of today's result, with the winner receiving 25 points and all drivers in the top 10 scoring. The Constructors is, however, a little more interesting, with ATR taking the lead. Defending champions Precision Motorsports are close behind though, as are a strong-looking Twister Racing, and ATR's new sister team, AT Racing, is in 4th place. The all-new MacCore team will be happy with their performance, picking up 13 points, and GT Amiga Racing have started their season with a healthy 6 points. Despite some last-minute managerial problems, Silverline have done well and shown impressive pace, scoring 4 points at their season start. The next race will be the Malaysian Grand Prix, and you can watch that race live as it happens. Simply go to www.simrace.tv on the 22nd of April at 4 PM GMT. And don't forget to check out Formula Sim Racing on both Facebook and on Twitter. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I'm Simon Adebisi, and we'll see you next time for round 2 of the 2012 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.